This podcast is brought to you by Mapper Forward's new Patreon community, the Global Coffee Think Tank. Check the show notes or head to patreon.com/Mapper Forward to find out how you can become a member today. Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and I am joined again by Jonas Ferrariso. We are talking about Brazil, and as an agronomist, Jonas is a different kind of agronomist. Jonas is looped into all the different parts of the supply chain and the value chain. We have talked about the different weather events that have happened in the previous episodes over the last couple of years. We've talked about yields. We've talked about what happened to the trees with frost. And now we're kind of at that point where we're looking at the 2022 harvest. With that, though, comes some significant economic challenges, shall we say, that are not unique to this year because they were starting last year. But Jonas, let's talk about the inflation and how that's affecting the way coffee is being produced. I saw a number on from Hawaii, actually, where fertilizer was up 300%. What kind of things are you seeing? How is inflation affecting producers in Brazil?
Yeah, the fertilizer crisis was the first thing that farmers faced. Was not just is not just because of a problem like currency, because most of the fertilizer, when we called about the big fertilizer, coffee needs three main nutrients to grow. It's nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. So
Potassium?
this is the potassium and phosphorus.
Yes, phosphorus is correct.
Yeah. So these nutrients are extracted from rocks. Just the nitrogen, not, but the potassium and phosphorus.
Yep.
It's like mining. They mine, so they treat these nutrients to make it soluble from the plants. So some of these sources are located in Russia, and this explains a lot.
That's a scary word right now, my friend.
Yeah, and some are located in some areas in the Morocco's. I forgot the word in English. Morocco. And there are some places in Canada too. Of these two main nutrients. So during the pandemic, Russia started to not export as many raw material to make fertilizer to countries. One was Brazil, which take our agricultural ministry to go to Russia to deal with that and make it easier to the fertilizer to come to Brazil, because we are a huge country that produce a lot of crops. Coffee was one of them, but we are very how can I say dependent to other countries to source raw material to make fertilizer. If there's no fertilizer, there are no yields in the fields, because all the technology to have, like, for example, in coffee, 65 to 760 kilo bags per hectare are linked to good techniques of fertilization.
Right.
So because of that, the international prices for some fertilizers start to rise it up.
Rising.
And then we have the problem with the currency, because all the commodities in the world, the price was established in dollars.
US dollars.
The US dollars. So the prices, the Brazilian currency devaluated, the dollar started to go high. And then we have about 200 to 300 inflation on fertilizers. So in some cases, farmers do not find fertilizers because...
So it wasn't available because it was too expensive, or because of there
wasn't... because farmers was, you know, like we have with the toilet paper.
Right. So they were hoarding it. Right.
Yeah,
so
everyone is taking and putting in the farm, so people are buying to make sure the price is going to buy before the price go too much higher. Oh, they have like stocks to use in the future. So we face, it's not for a long time, maybe 1 month. And some farmers do not fertilizing using the soluble fertilizer. They start to use manure again, like old school, because it's available here. We have like many poultry. I forgot, like
poultry
chicken.
Farms.
Poultry farms and cattle. So farmers that are close to these areas, these farms, they start to buy because it's cheaper and available. And it's interesting, usually when something goes wrong, old school is always the solution to help in some way. And I think it's important to know all the techniques, because sometimes we don't have the technology, so we have to use what we already learned from the guys that develop stuff before me. So it's interesting to have an alternative. That is why many people are thinking about organic coffee. So maybe could be a solution in some way, because we don't have enough poultry areas to fertilize all the coffee in Brazil, and we don't have just coffee. We have like corn and beans.
Soy.
So people are studying ways to reduce the use of soluble fertilizer. Will be always important, but maybe we could use in different proportions and make it the farming more independent for this kind of crisis.
I heard a report, I believe it was on Bloomberg, where they were talking about how commodities are going to be a really interesting place for investors to start putting their money as, you know, economies around the world start to collapse. And something, it was interesting in what they said was this will be helpful for experiments that are going to be done to help producers lower their costs and get access to better fertilizers. And what they were talking about was that human waste could now be used as a way to repurpose human waste to fix this problem of not having enough access to fertilizer.
You know, really in my university, we study that because there's a lot of we have like how can I say that, you know, the place that the waste from the what is treated. I don't know the word in English.
I know what you mean. Where waste treatment facilities.
Yeah. We had one inside our university.
Oh, wow.
In my university. So they studied the mud because the treatment of the waste, it's turned to a mud, a very dense mud, because we treat the water in order to put it back to the rivers, for example. We cannot keep it. That's why we have a facility to treat this water. So we have this mud, and there we start to use to test after the mud was stabilized. So it's not more human waste; it's just organic matter. We start to use in experiments. The main problem is the waste have metals. It's not part of my study, but I know that because I saw in some data from experiments. Probably was related to some stuff that we use, not necessarily human waste, but some stuff that go in the sink with like
like
chemicals,
like detergents and
things
stuff
like that. So that is why it's a problem to use so much human this waste, because there's not just human waste, it's all waste from the house go to the treatment. So these heavy metals like I don't know the word
like
in
mercury?
English, like plumbum, like you know, I forget the word. Oh my gosh.
What's the word in Portuguese?
It's chumbo. It's plumbum. I forget the
like
word. I just
silver?
remember. Yeah, it's not silver. It's the one that is very heavy to protect from radiation, you know? That people use it to protect for radiation around the nuclear facilities. I forget the word.
And I've forgotten the word, and I shouldn't have forgotten the word because I was just watching a documentary on it. But I think people are screaming at us in their cars right now, yelling out what this metal is.
So these heavy metals, it's toxic, not just for humans, but for plants too. Okay. So sometimes we can't use in this mud. It's very, very fertile, like with nitrogen and potassium, all the nutrients, but the heavy metals is a problem for soil contamination. Okay. This is the only reason that in the university, sometimes we do not use for huge crops, but they start to use in small pots that could be, the soil could be controlled and then treated. Okay. So people are studying that at least in my university for more than 10 years. Yeah, now it's more than 20 years because it's 10 years since I got my degree. Yeah, so so it's important to, you know, understand all our possibilities. Options. Because we don't know if for example, the mineral areas that we extract these minerals, it's not endless. Someday we will finish, and we have to start to understand how to use different sources of nutrients to feed the world. I always said, in a day that we are understanding that a plate of food is more important than an iPhone 13, we are get value to what people are doing, because food is cheap. What I'm worried. So I go to the market and buy a bag of Ruffles and it's fine. But it's important to say that it's a very how can I say that, enterprise for the farmer, because there's this huge problems that was around. No matter if I want to grow coffee or grow maize, corn and beans, if I don't have the proper inputs to do that.
The food supply chain is so delicate. I mean, especially when you look at, let's not even consider that we might run out of phosphorus. You know, Russia. Like, you just have to say Russia. We're recording this towards the end of February. A war hasn't broken out yet. But if there is a war, and who knows how long it goes on for, you know, the Iraq war went on for 20 years, over 20 years. So if there is a war in that region and you guys can't get access to the inputs that are localized to that part of the world, or it starts to become a bargaining chip from an economic and political standing of is Brazil being such a massive producer of the world's food source, if Brazil wants access to these raw commodities, are they going to work with Russia or work against Russia? And will those inputs be weaponized to hold the world's food supply hostage?
Exactly.
The food supply is so beholden to political agendas. And as you said, you know, if people stopped and thought about it for a second and didn't just think, well, I'm always going to be able to go to the supermarket and get food. Until you can't.
Yeah, it's just like in the pandemic, when we are in the starting, people start to buy everything like in the supermarkets, even food, and some people go there and do not find what they want, and they are very how can I say that, very frustrated. And just it was happened for, I don't know, 2 months, 1 month. People can't imagine if we don't have the raw material to do stuff that like we eat every day, like wheat. It's very important for the whole chain. So of many products that we eat. So if we have a problem in supply this, like we have in coffee, we don't know if the season will be enough coffee to supply the whole world, because of this difference between consumption and production. And people are worried, and coffee was not a primal, not primal,
it's not a primary.
It's primary.
Yep, I got you, bro.
Primary, not a primary food. So people don't realize it happens for another food that's important, like corn, rice, and wheat. That is I think is the main source of energy for many countries around the world. These three commodities that's very important for, in my opinion, corn and rice and wheat.
Yeah. In the next episode, we're going to answer a question from our Patreon audience that is going to tack on very nicely to what you just said. And before we start that, we will figure out the metal that we've both forgotten. We'll be back in the next episode, folks. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks, friends. If you enjoyed this video, here's what you should check out next. Consider supporting Map It Forward on Patreon, and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell before you leave.